rear children on their own. And I think that the processes of gender identity development and exploration of power is complex. Women sort of, and I mean, one thing is, even in single-headed households, or single, children raised by a single mother, women very often have boyfriends who may or may not live in for periods of time. There are other male family members who are around. There are men in the community. And we need to understand that family is one location for socialisation. But as people, from early childhood, but then with increasing importance as you do get older, peers become a very important context for socialisation. And particularly, when we get into the teenage years, peers can start becoming equally and then more important. And particularly the weaker the family, the more likely it is that peers will then become more important in terms of socialisation. And for most boys, the peers that we're talking about are boy peers. There isn't that much cross-gender socialisation. The issue with acceptability of violence is very complicated, because on one hand it's true that we don't go around encouraging boys to go and slap their girlfriends. But on the other hand, South Africa is very physical, and that violence is used a lot. Violence is used a lot in child rearing. A lot of boys experience violence from their mothers, as they do from their fathers. We're supposed to not have corporal punishment in schools, but actually corporal punishment's widespread in schools. Fighting physically amongst boy and girl children in schools is very widespread. Physical use of violence in the community and in families is very widespread, even not between partners, but amongst all sorts of other people with different relationships within the community. We've now got our Becky Pele promoting shoot-to-kill policies and enhanced use of violence by the police against criminals. But it's all part of a spectrum of acceptability of the use of violence in different circumstances to assert power over people, punish people in different circumstances in South Africa. And actually, violence is acceptable in South Africa, and there is a sort of high level of acceptability. And what happens when boys start socialising in their teenage years and exploring their use of power is that violence is one dimension of the use of power. The sort of young adolescent masculinities which are being constructed, very commonly predicated on ideas of, to be, real man, you should be tough and strong, and violence fits within that. And it doesn't mean that anyone goes to a boy and says, if she disses you, then you should slap her. And that's how we're supposed to look after our girlfriends. But actually, in fact, amongst young teenage boys, the idea that that is appropriate behaviour is really quite widespread. And there are stages in youth socialisation where it's what the mother actually says doesn't become relevant, but many of these things do actually get reinforced in the family because people see them happening within the family, and they also see families responding in different ways. But there would be very few South African families that don't have people who are well known to be very violent towards wives or girlfriends within the families, and these aren't running issues that come up, that get discussed, that get responded to within the families. And as that happens, people get a message around acceptability of violence.
The kind of masculinities that are being promoted is men don't show, the affection, etc., the father figure, the ways in which we show affection to, or we should be showing affection to each other in terms of what is socially acceptable. And you have this gang rape that is becoming quite widespread. And it seems to me, and I wanted to ask you your opinion on this, it seems to me that what we're seeing in the gang rape is the relationship of men to each other and women as the form of mediation.
I would agree entirely. I think that is right. I think we have an incredibly gender-segregated society where people do, and the sort of the men's peer group is tremendously important in their social life and in their socialisation. And to talk about affection between men in that peer group, I think, is quite right. And with gang rape, it's men exploring their power as a group of men, as well as, their individual acts of assertion of their power and violence over the woman who's involved. But it is very, very much about male bonding.
Shouldn't we move away from masculinities and femininities? Shouldn't we be bringing up children as human beings? Because it seems to me either or, whatever masculinity, the notion of a masculine and a feminine, for me, is inherent in the kind of divisions, the kind of divisiveness. This is without this is at the same time acknowledging, women's rights, men's rights to their sexuality, but that the notion of the separateness almost is inherent in the kind of divisions that we have.
No, I don't agree with you. I think masculinities and femininities are very, very important as issues. And I think that our identity is gendered. I think that there are sort of many reasons, not least of which is biology, and we shouldn't sort of dismiss the element of biology, which actually makes men and women different. I think to say that men and women are underneath totally the same is actually isn't true. I don't think men are totally the same as women underneath. What I think we should be doing is to build gender equitable masculinities and gender equitable femininities. And what we should be doing is looking at the way in which we shape them, and we shouldn't be shaping... there's a degree to which masculinities and femininities are constructed in a sort of relational way, so that one, they are, but what we should be doing is to build masculinities and femininities that can work together and that are cooperative in essence, rather than essentially seen as a situation where men have the power and women have to be sort of in a position which is subservient towards that use of power. And we need to say, we need to work together in one world, and I agree with you in that respect, but recognising that masculinities and femininities will be constructed in somewhat different ways. But what we want to do is to have cooperative masculinities and femininities that aren't predicated on power imbalance.